Hey everybody, I'm Robbie Bessner and welcome back to another episode of Global Health Solutions sponsored by Therasage. And today I have one of my dearest friends and it's such an honor to be in his company, Dr. Nathan Bryan. He's probably, I consider him the world's expert on nitric oxide. And we met, years ago. It feels like at least 10 years ago, I think a little bit less, at a stem cell conference in Austin, Texas. And it was just serendipity. I heard him on stage present. He's probably one of the best keynote speakers that I've ever heard present. I'm sorry if I'm embarrassing you. I don't mean to do that, but I just have to tell you how I feel. And just ever since that day, we've just been on a budding journey together and friendship together. And it's such a sense of community. He's a family man. He travels extensively, and in terms of philanthropic goals, he's probably one of the most heart-centered individuals I've ever met in my life. So with that, I want to bring Nathan Bryan onto camera. And mostly I just want him to start, hey Nathan, could you do me a favor? And just for people that are just tuning in, let's talk a little bit about the backdrop behind you. And actually, I should tell everybody, we have many things in common. We both went to Boston University. Of course, you did graduate work, I did undergraduate work, but we did share that Boston thing together. Tell me a little bit about, give me a little bit of a backdrop on sort of how you even got interested in bioresearch and getting involved in nitric oxide.
Well, thanks, Robbie. Again, it's great seeing you. Always good being with you. I was always interested in science and medicine. Out of high school, I went to University of Texas and got a degree in biochemistry, and quickly realized that the job market for a bachelor's degree in biochemistry wasn't stellar. So I realized I had to go back and further my education. So then I went to LSU School of Medicine. I enrolled in a PhD program in molecular and cellular physiology. And it was there I was introduced to this whole concept of nitric oxide. It was new. A Nobel Prize had just been awarded for its discovery. We made a lot of discoveries at LSU when I was a student, and then I went to Boston University, School of Medicine in Boston, obviously, and I did a postdoc fellowship there, and I spent, 2 years as a fellow, and then came back to Texas, and I was recruited to join the faculty of University of Texas Health Science Center in Houston as an assistant professor of molecular medicine. And then it was there that really we started to really gain a fundamental understanding of nitric oxide. And I started filing invention disclosures that the university then submitted as patents. We started getting patents approved. And then the next question was, how do we take these basic discoveries and now bring this to consumers, to patients, to people that could benefit the most from this nitric oxide technology? And that's where the whole commercialization efforts began. And I guess about 10, 12 years into that, my career kind of took a turn because I really stepped away from academia because I felt confident enough that we'd made enough discoveries and had a firm enough understanding that now we needed to take this to the next level. And how do you do that? And, there's different models. Typically in an academic institution, these institutions will license technology to existing companies to then commercialize it. But we were so far ahead of our time that there weren't a lot of companies out there developing nitric oxide products, so they weren't interested in licensing any technology or intellectual property for nitric oxide-based products. So if no one was going to do it, then I knew I had to do it. And I started our first company, got our first license from the University of Texas. So with a group I met at an investor meeting, got the license.
That's what, like almost 20 years ago or more than that?
That was probably in 2008.
Okay.
And this group was an investment group, and their strategy was to take it and kind of build the awareness around it and then basically sell it off. And so they were largely unsuccessful. That group was called Nitro Ram.
Okay.
And I met another group of people at another investment meeting that then, took the license we basically reverted back that license to the University of Texas. Then we started this other company called Neogenis Labs.
Okay.
I had 3 other partners out of Austin. And then that company eventually grew. We licensed our technology from University of Texas. We brought to market a number of products, and all was well early on. But I had 10 to 12 years of know-how, of trade secret, of intellectual property that I had stored in my brain, aside from the patents and the intellectual property rights that they had licensed to. It was a really great environment. I had a lot of confidence in these people that they were going to truly dedicated to taking our technology to market. In fact, I cared so much for them that they became the godparents of my youngest son. So
amazing.
True family environment. And then, I look back now and try to figure out where did all this go wrong? Because today, as you're aware, we're involved in a number of really nasty lawsuits from my previous partners in that company. So, you and I are problem solvers, right?
Right.
So anytime there's conflict, we look back and go, what created this conflict? How do we solve this problem? And I always look kind of personal reflection. What did I do to initiate this? And I think that's typically how most people deal with conflict, or they should deal with conflict. What did I do to initiate this? And now how do I resolve it? And how do I make this better? And looking back, and obviously I reflect upon this every day of my life as we're going through this battle. So what happened? Early on, things were going really well. The company came out, we grew, exponentially, and we basically created a market for nitric oxide, which no one knew about. So we first developed an orally disintegrating tablet. Then we developed a bead powder, because now at that point, this is about 2012, this is after the 2012 Olympic Games, and it was realized that a lot of the Olympic athletes in London Games were using beetroot powder to enhance their performance because of the nitric oxide effect.
Right.
So now we thought, okay, that's going to be the impetus for the awareness around nitric oxide, using the beets as kind of the driver of this. So obviously we know how to make nitric oxide, so that's what we did. We created a beet product. First product was called Beet Elite. We positioned it for athletes as a pre-workout, and then expanded the market into a product called Super Beets, just like as a natural daily energy source.
And all of this development, all the product applications were all hinged to all the patents that you had already in place and were, basically legally in place with the relationship with the University of Texas, right?
That's right.
And that was years before, anything really became a product per se to bring to market.
Yeah, so when we formed the company, we had concepts, right, and ideas, product concepts. We didn't have an actual product. So even before we started Neogenesis Labs, which became Human, I was going around the country trying to find a manufacturer who could take this concept of making a bioactive gas into a shelf-stable solid dose form.
Okay.
And there were very few people who would actually work with me and devote the time to help me solve this riddle. But we found that person, and they're the manufacturer of that product. But yeah, so everything we did was hinged upon the license field and the patents and the intellectual property that the company had licensed from the University of Texas. And then as a consequence of that, then the company had to pay royalties to the university for the sale of those patented products. I mean, that's just how license deals work. If you're using intellectual property from an institution, they get remunerated from that, from the successful sale of those products. And this is really where I think, looking back, where things took a turn. Because the company was trying to grow, we were trying to expand our product line, and they wanted to develop another Super Beet product, but they didn't include Super Beets in that product technology.
Wait, you mean the formulations of Super Beets?
They changed the formulation that didn't include our so-called Super Beets. So the Super Beet brand was built on credible nitric oxide science, my science, patented technology, proven to generate nitric oxide. And so when the company pivoted and didn't want to use that technology in these line extensions, Super Beets, then I said, well, that's fine, but just don't call it Super Beets, right? Because it's not Super Beets. Super Beets is missing in absence from that product. So call it something else. Well, they didn't. And then in the meantime, they'd been selling these products and then not paying a royalty on those because it was a beet product. They thought, well, it's a nutritional. So it was, I guess, a misinterpretation of the license language. And so obviously, as a shareholder, I'm interested in what's best for the company to protect the company. So I actually notified the company, or basically brought it to their attention and reminded them that they're not paying a royalty on a patented product, and that puts the company at risk. It puts our license at risk from the University of Texas. So looking back, I think that was the impetus for the friction amongst the natives, if you will. And then obviously they contacted UT, and I think they had to pay several $100,000 in back royalties. So obviously that was a very stressful, created a lot of friction amongst the leadership of the company. So I think that's where it all started. And then when they started to kind of, develop these product extensions of super beets that didn't contain super beets, and I brought that to their attention, that created more divide and more friction. And the reason I did that was really from a safety standpoint, because we'd just completed a clinical trial at Texas Children's Hospital in some pediatric patients that have a rare kind of an orphan disease status. And we'd realized that our nitric oxide technology completely rescued these kids when no other medication was effective. So now that those trials were over, the parents that had the kids in these clinical trials, because they did so well, they go, how do we continue this medication? But they couldn't, because the product we were using wasn't an approved product, it was in a clinical trial. But we knew that the Super Beets powder would give similar results because it generates nitric oxide. So now these families started buying the Super Beets powder to keep these kids on this nitric oxide technology. And then when they switched them to these other Super Beet products, they weren't getting results. So from my perspective and the perspective of the clinicians, this became a very dangerous situation.
Right.
So it not only was disingenuous, but it put people at risk. And that puts the company at risk. So I was very adamant about how we address this. And to just, you can keep the products out there, just please don't call them Super Beets. Change the name to where there's no confusion around what these people that are dependent upon a nitric oxide superfood or super beet is getting, as opposed to a product that's maybe labeled as such but doesn't deliver that nitric oxide. That, I think, kind of created an explosion and a diversion. And I was forced out of the company, I believe, in 2015. I served out my non-compete, served out my consulting agreement, even during that time when I was not employed in the company. And there was only a period of 3 years from 2010 to 2013 where I was under a consulting agreement. All the other time, I was basically kind of a volunteer at the company. I was receiving royalties from my patents, but I wasn't an employee. But I supported the company, and still after that, I went out and spoke at these events, and I would, still recommend our nitric oxide products to them, and they basically told me to stop sending them business, and it was. Obviously it hurt my feelings because, I'm trying to do what's best for the company, create awareness around nitric oxide. And then the next question is people go, well, what do I do? What do I take? Well, I send them to the patented products that I know work, that are validated by clinical trials. And then they tell me to cease and desist and stop doing that.
I'm sorry. I'm just getting emotional a little bit right now because there's so much more here.
Yeah.
Like, you're not even talking about the selfless acts, your reputation. Like, your whole persona was around the birth of an application that didn't exist. You're a pioneer. There's a lot of sweat equity. There's a lot of your persona, of your being that's wrapped into that. And now, unbeknown to you, you're kind of set up in the situation by the company that I think you were kind of the figurehead of the company. You're certainly the face of the different applications. And I mean, I told you one time I was out on a convention, and I woke up in the middle of the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, and there you were on some Instagram or some kind of a infomercial.
TV
That's what it
commercial,
was. Yeah. And I said, I must be dreaming. I thought I didn't know where I was. But like, to get it straight, they didn't pay royalties to the university, but yet they were using the branding of that intellectual property to sell a product that didn't have those ingredients. And so it compromised so many situations in the dynamic. And I mean, it doesn't take rocket scientists to figure out the bait and switch and the shell game that was going on. And it really put you in some really awkward position because you needed to do something for the sake of the company that you believed in and that you were the figurehead from or for. And at the same time, here's your reputation that's somewhat on the line. And it seemed like many of the economics were more towards the company and not towards the foundational elements that built the company, including yourself. And that, I'm telling you, when I see this stuff, it really just kind of makes the milk in my coffee curdle a little bit.
Yeah.
I have to say it.
No, personally, it took me 20 years, 15 years to build a reputation in the scientific community around innovative nitric oxide. And as you know, it takes a career to build a good reputation. It takes a second to kill it. Right. So for me, in terms of peer esteem and my academic colleagues, I can't afford to put products out there that don't deliver on strong foundational, validated, verified science. And that what was happening. The company was creating products that really didn't meet the rigor of the science kind of I was comfortable with to have my name. So I think it was a mutual divorce. They were going in a different direction, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But just be honest and forthright, and not disingenuous about branding products to piggyback and hijack my science to brand a product that doesn't deliver.
Right.
And so that's, fortunately they got rid of those 3-beat super beat powders that didn't deliver the nitric oxide. But now they have a super beat chew that obviously you can't deliver nitric oxide gas in the form of a chew. And two, there's no super beats in that super beat chew. So that's a whole nother problem that I think the company's going to have to deal with. But, for me, it was about truth in advertising, sticking to the science, and we built this company on this whole concept. If you do the right thing, the cash register rings, right? But let's not go out and try to make the cash register ring. Well, I think in any company life cycle, especially when outside investors come in, now there's enormous pressure to grow that. And the sacrificial lamb, a lot of times, is the science.
Right.
And that's where they've gone. And look, that's fine. As a shareholder, still a major shareholder, I want nothing but success for the company. But people also have to be held accountable in terms of how they're positioning products, and especially using my science that they've licensed in developing products that actually work, that have verifiable clinical trials, that there's truth and authenticity in what they're doing.
People before profits.
Absolutely.
Okay.
To never get away from that principle.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes that gets switched. And for you, you got caught in the middle of the switching of that, unbeknown to you.
Yeah, but that's fine. Look, there's divorces with company founders and the new leadership of the company. Steve Jobs is probably the best example. He got fired from his own company, right. So I kind of can empathize now with him, and that's fine. But then when there's a diversion and a divorce, then I think you have to support one another. Obviously, I still want to support the company and do what's best for the company, but at the same time, I'm not contractually bound. I have freedom to operate, and when there's still a need and they're turning away the business that I'm taking them from these conferences, then I started these other companies because if they're not going to focus on nitric oxide, then somebody has to. And if not me, then who? So I created these other companies. We developed a skincare line, which is completely separate and independent from humans' kind of product offerings. And that's an amazing company, and it's an amazing product. We created a drug company called Nitric Oxide Innovations, where we've gone out and tried to save the lives of African Americans with COVID. We have a drug in phase 3 clinical trials for COVID. Now we've got drug programs in ischemic heart disease, an Alzheimer's drug program, and then using our topical nitric oxide for non-healing wounds. So really some unmet medical needs and some really untapped major markets where we could, I think, change the world. And unfortunately, they've filed lawsuits not only against me personally, but against all 3 companies: my skincare company, my drug company, and my most recent supplement company.
That have really nothing to do with any of that stuff.
Nothing to do with it's not infringing upon the license agreements, not infringing upon the patents. These are separate technologies that I developed outside anything I was doing with human or for human. But yet it doesn't, I've learned a lot about our legal system here in the U.S. And unfortunately, that's just how it works. And it's really the David versus Goliath and it's legal strategy. I mean, there's really no merit to any of the claims they filed against me or my companies. It's really, big companies can tie a small guy up in litigation and basically drain him financially, submit him, physically, mentally, and that's just how it works. In fact, that's, how big companies really rule the world, because they can outspin me. But fortunately, we're going to continue to fight, and I just don't understand when it makes no sense to me, because I'm trying to do good, right? And take this technology that I know without a doubt has the potential to change the world. And, they're doing some really good things too, and I applaud them for that. But, go your direction, I'm going to go mine. And the fact that they're filing lawsuits against my drug company when there's so much promise for saving the lives of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people, specifically African Americans with COVID, and tying that drug company up in litigation and really hampering our efforts to move forward with clinical trials because of funding issues. This has cost me over $1 million the past year. It'll probably cost me another $1 million to fight this. And principle can sometimes be very expensive, but I made a commitment years ago that I'll never compromise principle, and they can come after me. But the good thing is the truth is on my side, and the truth sets us free. And so I'm as resolved as ever. It's unfortunate. Many nights lost sleep, probably many years of advanced aging, dealing with this and really trying to find understanding and a resolution to the conflict. But I also realize in this process that sometimes there is no resolution to a conflict of people trying to take you down and destroy me personally, professionally, mentally, physically, from every aspect.
It's a shame that we're living in such a litigious world now, that anyone can file a frivolous lawsuit, and you're forced to defend yourself, which puts you on the defensive when you really have nothing to defend. But you need to do that in order to be able to work within the system, so that they don't get a judgment that makes you look guilty when you've done nothing wrong at all. And it's a shame, because it does prevent a pioneer like yourself to be laser focused. And it's really amazing to me. And I've seen the wear and tear on you, honestly. As a friend being close to you over the years, I'm going, oh my God, how does he do this? How does he keep a straight face? How does he manage to be unwavering? And I think that really speaks volumes to you. And, as a scientist, it's easy when you're in the lab to sort of block out that noise, the things that distract you. But you're in the real world. You're a figurehead. You're moving forward with your companies. You're seeing real change. You really want to make a difference in healthcare and people's lives. And it's hard to reconcile when you're out in the real world, that noise. It's hard to put that out. And that just speaks volumes to you and your ability to really be unwavering and zero focused. So I just want to applaud you, because just as your friend, I've seen people just try to claw at you. And I know, there's a financial piece, and that is unfortunate, and fortunate for you. You have the wherewithal to maintain, but still, it has to bug you a little bit. I know you have some balance. You've got a beautiful ranch, and you get out there and you hustle and you wrestle with the animals, and that gets you grounded. And I know that gets you balances you out a little bit. But here today, people that are just tuning in, and for me, for the first time, I didn't really understand how deep this went. I knew you were embroiled in lawsuits. We had our own challenges with Human as a company. They compromised my company because we were actually, distributing and selling some of their lozenge products, and we took orders in good faith, and we were at a conference, and then in the middle of nowhere, they just basically yanked the carpet out from under us and wouldn't let us fulfill these orders to these families and these clinicians and doctors, and we didn't understand why, but we did understand that it wasn't really good business practices.
Right.
And so it just seems like they're following this road that's a little bit off the beaten path, and maybe driven by economics or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You can't rationalize a lot of the things that occur, but part of me wears this as a badge of honor, because and this happens throughout history. When you create something of value that's really disruptive, people come after you. And it goes back to Schopenhauer in the 1600s, right? The German philosopher, that fundamental truths go through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed. Secondly, it's violently opposed. And then third, it's accepted as being self-evident. And I think that I've lived that in my academic career, and I've lived that kind of on the entrepreneurial side of things too. So obviously I was ridiculed by my academic colleagues when I said I'm going to develop solid dose form of nitric oxide gas. Now we're going through this phase of being violently opposed. I mean, people coming after me and trying to stop innovation, trying to stop delivering these products to people who can benefit from them. It changes their lives. And the most gratifying thing I do is deliver these products, because I get dozens, if not hundreds, of emails, phone calls, texts every week, every month, of people that we've changed their life. And there's nothing more gratifying, and very few people that live their entire life have the opportunity to change one person's life. And it said, if you change the life of one person, you've changed the world, and you've certainly changed their world. So that's kind of my North Star. That's my beacon. I'm not going to be distracted by the lawsuits. I'm looking forward to our trial date where I can present this case. And this is just part of the story. As we dig deeper and we get to present our story to a jury of my peers, I'm 100% confident, because I've done nothing wrong. I haven't wronged these people in any way, and my heart's pure.
I know how oftentimes you can second guess yourself, like, what did I do wrong? And that's always the opposition when you're dealing with people that act in good faith like yourself, and then you're opposed by people that don't have the best intentions. And that is a cover of a book that you don't always see until you're in the middle of the story. Yep. And so unfortunately, you are in the middle of the story, but fortunately for all of us, and I can speak just for myself, that you've taught me so much. And even you've taught me how to use nitric oxide within our business development to improve lives. And like you said just before, just changing one life really changes the whole trajectory of the planet in some ways. And so from a philanthropic point of view, just from religious point of view, from being a human point of view, you really are spot on. And so I'm amazed, and I'm really very humbled by the opportunity to be with you today.
Oh, thank you.
And actually share this story to everybody that's tuning in. I think that you make a difference. And I also have heard you say that you're not going to allow anybody to hijack your science and the amount of time that you put into the work that you do. And I think that really makes a difference and speaks volumes to you. Yeah,
well, thanks, Robbie. I think this is important, because, the most common question I get is, because early on, I was the face of human and the nitric oxide technology. And then, over the past several years, there's other companies. We have other companies that are separate and distinct from human, no overlap whatsoever in terms of technology. So people always ask, well, what's going on here? Did you guys sell the company? You're no longer involved in the company? And it's just, I think by putting kind of the backstory out there and, revealing this and kind of the progression of things and, the personalities involved, hopefully answers these questions and provides some clarity on the way forward. As still a major shareholder and royalty recipient from Human, I want them to succeed. I want them to keep on the path of growing the company, but just do it in a manner that's authentic and it's not deceptive in their marketing efforts and trying to, hijack my science, which the Super Beats brand was built on. And I think also it helps me to, understand the personalities of people involved, because they're taking and really getting away the number one principle in business is never let a personal issue drive company decisions. And I think that's probably the number one kind of sin, if you will, they've committed, because this is not in the best interest of human. It's certainly not in the best interest of the field of nitric oxide as we continue to get really the first and only nitric oxide therapy approved through the FDA. In 40 years of science, no company's been successful doing that, including some big pharma companies who have consulted for and consulted with. So I think this is in nobody's best interest. And I hope and pray that this will go away, that, the lawyers will realize that, this is a futile effort. They're spending unnecessary money on both sides. They're spending money. I'm forced to spend a ton of money that could go toward more productive efforts. So, Robbie, thank you for allowing me to come on and highlight and hopefully illuminate and answer a lot of questions that I get every day, because it really brings me down to have to answer these questions, because it's a constant reminder of the confusion that's caused in the field. I get a lot of support. People know that I'm, being sued and having to go through this legal battle. But, people like you and friends and family that provide me constant support and re-encouragement keep me going. And again, the truth will set us free. And fortunately, I have the truth on my side.
Well, free yourself to be yourself, right? So
right.
I think it was really just a pleasure to be with you. And I think everybody can truly understand the dynamic of what's here. And like you said earlier, David and Goliath, and we saw the power of just what David could do against the giant. And it's unfortunate that you're in this situation, but I think what happens at the end, it springboards you into a much higher elevation, both from energetic and spiritual level. And I think ultimately, as this story comes out, that you're the new ventures that you're in, the new energies that you're putting towards the new inventions and applications are going to be more noticeable, because we're really kind of talking about the power of healing with using your own body physiology and identifying this silly molecule that does such an amazing benefit for the body. And so being a pioneer, being positioned, understanding both the economics, the entrepreneurial piece, having all the patents, dealing with the drug companies, FDA and so forth, you have all of that important knowledge to actually bring this to the end user, to the public, where it belongs. And that is an amazing responsibility, and only a guy like you could do that. So,
well, I'm absolutely convinced this molecule will change the world, and the only way we can do that, the basic science means nothing if we don't get it into the hands of consumers and doctors, a safe and effective nitric oxide-based therapy, because the science is very clear. There's not a single indication where nitric oxide at the right dose at the right time is not beneficial. So lawsuits, digress innovations. And I think we have to move past this. And, the world's big enough. There's big enough markets out there for everybody to participate and do well financially, but more importantly, do the right thing. And so that's what I remain focused on.
Well, I want to leave you with a little story. It's what I call the beach ball effect. And so what's happened so far, and what the other company is trying to do, is take a beach ball and kind of put it under the water and hold it under the water, to try to keep you underwater, under caps, right? But then eventually they let go. And then what happens to the beach ball? It springs out of the water and into the atmosphere, into our lives. And that's what I feel the energy of what you're doing now is going to do and be. And so, Nathan, just put it there, buddy. I really appreciate you. And I think everybody out there today is going to get a really good feeling on what side of the fence Dr. Bryan and his work is at, and what he's doing to make sure that all of us are a little bit more healthy and a little bit more safe, and live great lives, live the way we're supposed to be, find our purpose, and live in bliss. And Nathan, there's nothing more important and righteous to help all of us achieve that in our lifetimes. So thank you for that. That's our mission.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to an amazing another episode of the Global Health Solution and Healthy Hotline, sponsored by Therasage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.